Welcome to The Problem, a Locklye & Co. podcast. I'm Caitlin.
I'm Alan.
And today we are talking about the second part of part 5, possibly the last. I don't remember if we split this into 2 or 3.
It's the last two. 2 parts.
The last part of part 5, The Iron Chain, chapters 26 and 27, in which we explore a strange new world.
Oh, yeah.
A strange old world?
Then I have the Aladdin song going through my head now, so thanks for that. Which is like a whole new world and not a whole strange world.
A strange new world.
A strange new world, yeah.
If I was a smarter person, I could change the lyrics and make a really good joke here, but sadly, that is not my forte in life. Especially since the fire alarm in my building went off at 3 a.m. last night.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Was there a fire?
No.
Oh, disappointing.
Oh, thanks.
You get up for nothing.
No, honestly, I do think I'd rather that, the no fire, than to, not having a home.
Yeah, I guess.
But it was loud. It was loud. Which I guess is great. It's nice to know it wakes you up.
It works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, this week's chapter art, creepy woods. Like, don't go that way.
Yeah. It's hard to like depict a frosted over all white world in this minimalist kind of style that the book has, but like it does look creepy and foreboding.
Yeah. Definitely the better choice than to like try to draw a frosty field.
Yeah, white on white. Yeah. It'd be like, what is this?
But that is sort of where we start. It's still nighttime, but it's different.
Because in the last chapters they went through the portal, and now, well, they didn't know it was a portal.
They don't know
but
it's
now
a portal.
now they're in this.
They're physically where they think they will be, but everything feels a little off. Yeah. Also, great use of the word escarpment. You don't hear it too often. And I just really like it.
I like that they kept it from English to North American. They didn't try to
dumb it down.
North American kids are too stupid to know what an escarpment is.
To be honest, it's one of those words that I don't actually think I know the definition of, but like when I read it, I understand what they're saying. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But if anybody ever asked me what an escarpment is, I was like, I don't know, a landmark of some kind.
It's a French word.
Who knows
what they mean? I don't know.
You know, I hate French.
To me. I will say, for the sake of our format, because it will forever bother me, that in chapter 26, Lockwood and Lucy travel on the other side back to Albury Castle and then retreat to the Rotwell Institute.
Cool. I forgot all about that and was just like, we're in it now. It's dark but light. It's cold and frozen, even though it wasn't a minute ago.
Yep. Something's wrong.
There's no moon, but there is light coming from somewhere.
Everywhere. Yeah.
That's the creepiest part to me.
Yeah, I agree. The everywhere light, it's kind of like I have the same kind of phenomenon when I dream. I have pretty strong dreams, but there's never a source of light or anything, if that makes sense. Like everything just is, and that's part of like the eeriness of dreams to me.
Interesting. I've never really thought about that. But at first, Lucy and Lockwood just sort of think they're lucky because nobody from the Rotwell Institute seems to have followed them. Nobody's around. And it kind of looks like they've just made it out without being noticed. Although I do love that they kind of look back and they realize that there's no lights on. And Lockwood is just like, well, the power must be out. Maybe that's what distracted them.
Mm-hmm. And they're like, oh, we should just go back to town. Like, take this good luck and make an escape.
And they say, like, let's see if we can catch up with the others. So
yeah. And I think the whole time we as the readers have a feeling that like something is very wrong. But the characters don't know.
They definitely have a feeling that something is wrong. They must be fooling themselves.
I think a little bit.
Because like with everything going on, with everything they've talked about, a part of them knows. I have to assume that they're not that dumb.
Yeah, I don't know that it's common knowledge that there is per se an other side. So I don't know that they would know like, oh, we must be on the other side. You know what I mean? Like, so they know that like ghosts exist, obviously, but they exist kind of here somehow, and they don't really understand like how is that possible? Like George talks about, like a thinning between layers and ghosts can pop out, but like that doesn't necessarily mean that they live in some other world. So I think that they are just like avoiding thinking about this too much because it's,
Right.
alarming and weird. But I don't know that they even have enough information to just leap to the conclusion of like, we're on the other side.
That's fair that they've never really talked about the other side being in place, but I just think they've spent like 3 books talking about how, making the windows bigger and bringing more sources together and what that would mean.
Mm-hmm.
And in this book, they have talked about how if you could, if you had enough sources, you could potentially create a doorway instead of a window.
Yeah. And we've brought up Orpheus,
Yes.
which, is pretty explicit.
Yeah, obviously. And all those things. So I don't know. I feel like they would think to themselves, maybe not we are physically on the other side, but like maybe we are somewhere that ghosts come from. We've gone through the doorway.
Yeah. And I think that we as readers put all that together before they do, or before they're willing to acknowledge it.
I have to think of it that way because
yeah,
they don't pick it up for too long. They are smart people.
Yeah, for a really long time. Yeah. I have this thing, I think I talked about it before, that's like the differences between detective books and thrillers,
Right.
which can be like almost exactly the same, plot wise, character wise, like everything can be the same. And I find that the only difference between them is that in a detective story, the detective knows more than the audience. And in a thriller, the audience is a little bit ahead of the detective at any given moment. So you'd be like, don't go down that hallway. Oh my God, the bomb's in the briefcase, and the detective doesn't know it yet. And I feel like that's what's going on here, is the more thriller side of it, where you're like, what if they're on the other side? And they slowly come to admit that.
I guess what does it for me is when, where is it? Lucy says, it's a strange light. Everything's so flat. And Lockwood says, moonlight does odd things. And Lucy's like, where's the moon?
Where's the moon? Yeah.
And he's like behind the
Lucy's
clouds?
like, can we just talk about this? And Lockwood's like, look, we should get going.
Yeah. That to me says that they are fooling themselves, not because I don't know. Have you been, I assume you've been out in the middle of nowhere at night where there's no,
sure, been
where
lost,
it's pitch black and
yeah.
The stars and the moon, you can see them. There's a lot of light that comes from them when you're away from the city.
Yeah. You can see. Not great, not far away or colors very much,
not
but you
great,
can see.
But yeah, you can see. Especially if there's like a big moon, which I don't remember if they mentioned. But anyways.
It's really Lockwood's forte, though, to be like, hey, anyway, let's get going. And let's not think too hard about what's going on.
That's true. And George isn't there to be like, wait, we should think about this. So
yeah,
they do just keep going. Even though they've also noticed that ice is building up on the back of their cloaks. Like, no matter how cold it is, ice is not going to build up on the outside of your clothing. Like, that's not...
Yeah, even Lucy even brings that up a little bit later. She's like, where did all this frost come from? Like, we snuck in here on our bellies and it wasn't like this.
But I can see fooling yourself, and like, it's the middle of the night. They're in a different part of the country. Maybe they don't know how cold it gets, although they've already spent a night there, but you know what I mean? Frost can come. I don't know how fast it takes frost to form, like on grass and stuff. It's just sometimes there. So that makes sense to me. But the frost and the ice, like on the outside of the cloaks, because Lucy at one point says she can feel how heavy it is.
Yeah. And she's looking at Lockwood being like, wow, it is piling up on him.
Yeah.
It must be on me too. Yeah.
So that's crazy.
There's a bunch more hints that happen. They get to, like a a creek bed or like a river,
Hmm.
and all the water is gone when they crossed over it before. And they're like, how could the water have just disappeared? I don't understand. And Lockwood, is like, no, this is bone dry. There was never water here. So like, that's pretty weird.
Hmm.
So there's all kinds of hints, the lack of the moon, the weird light. You're supposed to have a feeling, I think, as a reader that like, oh no, this is like something really unusual and terrible is going on here.
Yeah, and they don't see any people for a while. They don't meet up with their friends. And then they kind of start seeing maybe people moving out of the corner of their eye.
Mm-hmm.
But like even when they get back to town, the lights aren't, the ghost lamp is just gone.
Like it never existed.
Yeah. And they go to the inn, and it is just not, it's not what it
Like
was.
Yeah, abandoned. There's like a stale smell to the
Yeah.
air. So it's just the whole thing is very eerie.
And then that's when they notice that they both have the like smoke and flames coming off the back of them that they saw on the creeping shadow.
Mm-hmm.
And this is when they start to put it together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think this is literally the place where we were talking about before. Kips is looking out the window of,
Oh, I see.
like they're right outside of the Old Sun Inn, and like across the road from it and stuff. And they're talking to each other about their capes and how there's, like some kind of heat coming off it's like, when you fill up your mug full of hot tea and you see the
steam.
Yeah, that's how I imagine it.
I don't really know how I imagine it. I don't know. It's just one of those things I go with.
Yeah, it's very difficult to, like, you've never seen anything like this, right?
Yeah.
Like it's a weird supernatural thing.
The sort of gray, cold world, I feel like we've seen in movies a lot.
Yeah.
And so that I can picture really well. But the way that the cloaks are being is a little different for me. But yeah, so they talk about how they went into the circle and came out again on the other side. And it is interesting how he says, we came out again, we left the circle on the other side. We followed the iron chain and left on the other side. Mm-hmm. Just talking about the circle, but obviously
that's what happened.
Yeah.
So this is like pretty huge. Probably the effect that Rotwell is searching for, so they can, like, I guess, explore the other side. I'm not sure to what end. Like, do you have any sense of like what his goal is, or is he just like researching?
Well, at the end, when in the next chapter, when has sort of his confrontation with Lockwood, he says, I don't remember the exact quote, but something like, "You don't even understand what's happening here. You haven't put it all together yet." So Rotwell must know that, I don't know, spoilers for book 5, that Fitz is responsible for the problem.
Yeah.
And
I don't know that he knows that here, though.
I don't know, the way that he says that to Lockwood, it does seem like he knows. Maybe, I don't know. That's how it felt to me, that he was saying, you haven't even, you don't know it all yet, or you haven't gotten there yet.
Oh, that's interesting. So like, it just didn't occur to me. I just think of him as more clueless, I guess.
Right.
So you're saying that possibly like he has figured out the reason that the problem is happening, and is maybe like researching either how to fix it or how to turn it to his advantage in some way.
To his advantage. And I mean, you say that he's slow. It has taken Rotwell 3 generations to figure out what Fitz did.
That's true.
Right at the beginning.
If he did. Yeah.
Yeah. So that is pretty slow. But he could also have, because I feel like he has talked about, maybe not, but I'm saying he might have figured out exactly what Fitz has done and is trying to duplicate that for himself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or if you don't like him, maybe his dad figured it out, but then died before he could,
right,
implement it, and left him his notebook.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
That type of thing. And I'm extrapolating a lot from one line, but that's That's what I get, because why research how to end something that makes you rich?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe you can better control it, or you could, yeah,
Yeah.
turn the whole thing and like to your advantage in some way, or even like reveal the truth in a way that like displaces your greatest rival
That's
and
true. That could be
makes
good.
you the
Yeah.
the hero of the whole thing. You know, like we went through one part of the circle and came out the other side. He's like, we got to go back. And at this point, Lucy is the one in denial. She's like, no, look, there's George and Holly and Kips. They're coming across the road. And Lockwood's like, I don't think so. They don't look right. And so when we look more closely at these characters, they are all the ghosts that Danny Skinner was telling them about.
That's got to
Uh
be so creepy
yeah, this is really good, I
to
think.
start recognizing all the people walking towards you as a dead person that somebody has described to you. Like,
Yeah.
that is very. Ugh. Would have been so good visually.
Yeah. Yeah. This is really strong, especially because it talks about like her blue dress, and that's like really stark in my mind against the kind of monochromatic,
Yeah,
you know,
very
like sky and ground.
very Schindler's List.
Yeah, exactly. That kind of thing.
But and little girl ghosts, they're the creepiest.
Uh-huh.
Especially if like she looks all nice in her dress. Like, no, thank you. Ugh. But yeah, so all these people sort of start walking towards them, and Lockwood points out that Danny Skinner described them all as the people who had died. And then they basically start making a run for it.
Yeah. Lucy agrees. We got to go back.
Yeah, before that happens, Lockwood has that moment where he's like, we have when he says that they have to get back to the circle, he says something like, "What if we're somehow still inside?"
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's pretty creepy.
It's an interesting idea too that like I don't know, like I find that really interesting because to me I would almost think that like the death is like the outside somehow, like that makes more sense to me, but he was like we went inside. I don't know. I like the idea that death is somehow enveloped in the living world. These are clearly like parallel dimensions. They have the same space, you know, like the town is there, the institute is there, the distance between them is the same and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
like they're parallel in some way, and the ghosts can punch through, and that's what's going on. But like I don't know, the idea that like the living world holds the world of the dead inside of it is somehow much creepier to me than the idea of like death is out there, like we're I don't know, like we're some warm core inside of a more dead universe. I don't know, I find that more comforting.
When I was in my early 20s, I had this friend who really loved to watch like psychological horror movies, which are not my cup of tea personally, but I ended up watching a lot of them because that's what we did. And I don't know why, but when Lockwood says, "What if we're still inside?" it reminds me of the Cube movies.
Oh yeah, I like those movies.
Okay, well, each to their own.
Yeah, I remember when that came out.
Yeah, me too, unfortunately.
I do. I like every kind of story. So I've seen a lot of horror movies.
Right.
They scare me really badly. Like they're not good for me. I sleep poorly after I watch them. And
Yeah, I'm not interested in sacrificing sleep to entertainment. Uh, but also, I'm not particularly interested in stories that are about, like, hey, when you isolate people, they actually suck. You know, like
Mhm.
humanity, the worst. I don't know. That's not the message I enjoy in a film.
Yeah, I don't agree with that viewpoint of the world, and I don't think that it makes for very compelling drama anyway. But yeah, a lot of horror does have that element to it for sure. That's true. Yeah, I like when there's one good character in horror and they have a lot of power because of their goodness. I don't know. Their
No, I understand
selflessness.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense. But I'd much prefer something like this, where it is friends who are put in a bad situation and get out through the power of friendship.
Mm-hmm.
That's my jam.
That's funny because I know that like it traumatized you,
Oh
the
yeah,
movie.
yeah. But
And that's basically what it is.
I didn't watch it all. I excused
Oh no,
myself.
you should. Yeah, that's bad because it would have really helped to see the ending.
No, well, probably not at that point. Like I was 5.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, ish.
Yeah, I
I don't know.
remember. You talking about like the John Ritter TV
Yeah, the
version
TV
thing? Yeah.
version. So I
Yeah.
really just watched that opening scene with what's his face's little brother disappearing
Yeah. Yeah.
down
Yeah.
to the thing, and I was like, no thanks. And I do distinctly recall being like, I'm gonna go to bed.
Yeah, that whole thing scared the shit out of me when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I couldn't sleep the first night that I watched it. It was bad.
I
Very
watched it
powerful.
again at a sleepover when I was 13, and I'm pretty sure me and my friends only rented it because Seth Green was in it.
Oh man, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Jeez. Wow.
And we were like deep into Buffy at the time. So we were
Mm-hmm.
like, gotta support the crew by renting. I don't think they make any money off that.
They make no money.
Well, so one of my friends was like in love with the Oz, so
It's child actors. That's funny.
yeah.
But yeah, you're right. The power of friendship. That's not helping them here. Luckily, feathers are helping them.
Yeah, so the ghosts start chasing them in a terrifying way.
Mm-hmm.
And it, I do kind of wish we saw what happened if a ghost touches you on the other side, because do you die? Or
I
is it
wondered that
something
too.
else?
Are they like more solid?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm so curious. But obviously, Lucy and Lockwood don't want to run that experiment, which is fair. I understand.
They even try to use a flare and it doesn't work, which is super interesting.
It is interesting. Like, no light can happen
Yeah.
except for this weird everywhere light. I wish they brought a flashlight or something.
Something. Yeah.
Yeah, to
What
try it
would
out.
happen if they lit a candle, or would
Yes,
it even work?
yeah, you'd have to bring both because electricity might not work, but fire might. But
Yeah.
the flare says kind of no about that. Anyways, I'm so interested. We need George here.
Yeah. I'm sure that Rotwell is doing all of these kind of experiments.
Yes,
Actually.
yeah, I am the evil scientist. That's why I never got into science. I would not stop. I would have zero morals. I'd be like, we gotta know that, and not my abysmal grades in school.
Yeah, not the math. It was my morals holding
Yeah.
me back.
I just knew. Yeah. Anyways, they're running from. Oh, I also wrote down here that I do wish they had talked to these people just to get a feel for how, if they're more there than the ghosts that we see in our world. And I guess we get an answer for this, I think, in book 5, but whether or not Lockwood could hear them.
Right. Yeah, because it seems like they can both see them equally.
Yeah.
Yeah, so talent might not be much of a factor on this side.
Which the scene that I'm thinking of in book 5, I 100% thought happened here. And so when Lucy was like, I gotta go get, my skull, and Lockwood kept, or when Lucy just saw the skull as a full ghost and Lockwood didn't, I was like, wait, what? When does that happen? Like, it must be book 5.
Yeah, I think he's just not paying attention.
Yeah, it's all
at that moment.
smooshed in my brain. Anyways, so they decide to run back and away from the ghosts. And this is when some bad things happen.
Yep. So Lucy's getting tangled up in the trees and stuff, and brambles.
Falls into some, you know what? It just says black thorns here. Is it? In my head, I always thought it was blackberry bushes, but I think it just says black thorns.
Yeah. It says, working their way implacably through brambles, still silent, patient, utterly unmoved, we struggled up the icy slope, skidding and gasping, plunged down a steep hollow into a thicket. Black thorns stabbed my spirit cape. Yeah. So she gets caught on these thorns, and it rips the spirit cape in half, and the cold attacks her, moves in.
I always picture after this Lucy being one of those people who are just always cold.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like a lack of heat. It seems like a supernatural presence.
Yeah, the way it's described, a piercing cold like death stabbed me like a knife driven between the shoulders. It kind of sounds like when you fall through ice, which probably not everyone has done. But if you do, it sucks.
It's terrible.
I will say that I've only fallen through ice up to my waist, so I did get out pretty easy, but then I had to continue walking to school.
Ugh. Oh, man. It's rough.
I didn't have to go for recess that day.
Lockwood, of course, pulls her in under his cape. Yeah, so she has to like huddle close, not just for warmth, but for safety.
Yeah, and they have that moment where they're both just like crouched on the ground, wrapped in the cloak. And it is like, it's almost a nothing moment. Like, they don't really say much. They don't do anything really, but it is very intimate somehow.
Yeah, it is.
Right? Because I can't even describe it. And I know everyone listening is like, this is one of the big Lockwood and Lucy moments.
Yeah.
Right? But honestly, rereading it, I was like, nothing that big happens here. He saves her life, obviously, but we don't get his point of view on that. So we don't know how panicked he was. We can just assume.
Yeah.
And they don't say much other than, let me know if I'm too close, but we have to stay close. And we have to keep going as we stay close.
It's nice that he's being a gentleman about it, I guess.
It is nice, but still, even just reading it, you're like, I guess that whole wrapped up in life with death surrounding them type of thing, it makes it, like, it was a really good idea on Stroud's part here to put them into one cape.
Yeah, I think the book has been like building to this kind of symbolically, right? Like they have talked so much about like, I'll save you and you save me, and you know, like I go too far, you pull me back. And that's what's happening here, that like she would die without him. And that's like really what the book is about. Like she tried to be on her own. He's not doing well without her. And now they need each other literally to make it through this.
Yeah.
It's not even necessarily romantic. Like it is also romantic, it feels like, but it's primarily like they do need each other.
Yeah. I wrote down that like it almost feels like they would not have made it if they were not sharing a cloak, especially later when they both get tired and they're like encouraging each other on.
For sure, yeah. Like if they were both in their own cloak, I think they would have weakened without each other. And that's, like I said, that's feels like the point.
That's their whole thing, yeah. But it's just interesting because I know that the fandom talks about this moment a lot, like, or brings it up, like it's a big fandom moment, but it's almost nothing. So it's just good writing, I suppose is what I'm saying.
Yeah. And I think it's too, like what you said, there's this strong contrast between death and life here. Like the whole world feels like it's trying to destroy them in this
stab them
moment.
How Lucy describes it. Yeah.
And they keep each other safe. So it's really beautiful. And it feels like a kind of emotional climax to the book.
Yeah. Like they've had the talk of Lucy coming back, and Lucy admitted the real reason why she left, and Lockwood admitted that he does go too far and that he needs to be better about that.
Yeah.
But somehow this does feel like, not out loud.
Even bigger.
Yeah, but them admitting that they need each other.
Yep.
Not saying that, obviously.
Doing it. Yeah. Which even goes back to what I was saying at the beginning of the book, how like a lot of things don't get said.
Yes.
But you feel them.
Yes, exactly. I guess that part of the story, this is the climax of, while the conversation was the stuff they do say.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, they make it back to the building, to the institute, and they can't find the chain. And this part is so interesting to me, because this would be like the same thing that was described before, the metal stake in the ground with the chain attached to it, pulled taut, but they don't see it on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes a ghost to point it out to Lucy.
Yeah, and it feels to me like what I just said about Lockwood and Lucy needing each other, that Lucy needs Skull. She literally needs him.
Yeah.
In this moment, or she would have died. They both would have died, it feels like. So it's like, he's necessary for her to live.
It's interesting,
really
though. Yeah. But it's interesting implications, because if a lot of people can't see it, how does the creeping shadow person get back?
I wonder if he has the same problem, because like when he came through, he seemed like so exhausted, and
Yeah, he definitely gets the tiredness
in the
and all that
chain,
sort of
like
thing.
it like rattled, but then it stayed still, and that's when all of them were like, "Oh, we gotta help him through." Like maybe he just knocked against it and didn't know it was there or something, and then like they pulled it through or made him notice it in some way. I don't know. Yeah, it is interesting that like the ghost lamp was invisible on this side, or
Yeah.
like it wasn't there, and then the iron is also like invisible somehow, or like it isn't there. So I don't know if these ghost repelling things just don't exist in this world, or
Or something,
you,
yeah. That's
yeah.
interesting. But as we've sort of alluded to, when they can't find it, a ghost that is obviously Skull points it out to Lucy, and then she can see it, and she points it out to Locklye, and then he can see it, and he's like, "How did we miss that? That's right there. It's right there."
Mm-hmm.
So they get hold of the chain, and they walk back through the circle, and suddenly they can see the ghost that they recognize from before, Solomon Guppy and Emma Marchment, which is a relief now instead of
Yeah.
terribleness. They sort of talk about how they have no idea what's going to be happening once they go through, but they need to get out of the world of the dead. So go
And
through,
yeah, and it just kind of ends there.
well, they walk into the blinding light of the real world, which would be weird, I assume.
Mm-hmm.
And it says where a battle was going on.
Yeah, it's a great ending, like page turner. Like what? Because they were worried about you know getting caught while they're being stealthy, and now something crazy is happening. So
Yeah.
you don't even know what's going on. There was a part earlier
Mm.
where it talked about Lockwood makes this kind of observation. He talks about our warmth, our life, it draws them all. They
Right,
followed
yes.
the shadow just the same. It's so like, when we saw the creeping shadow earlier, I was talking about how the Orpheus Society wants to master death and master the other side. And it looks like when the creeping shadow comes through the graveyard, that it's like leading a parade as if, it's mastered the dead, kind
Mm-hmm.
of doing the thing that they want. But we can see here that it's not mastery, it's like some kind of hunger, or, the living have something that the dead need or desire. And so that's why they're following them, and not like for any other purpose. They're not being commanded. So I I don't know. I like this idea. I think it goes back, like you've been saying, to like Greek mythology and stuff.
Uh-huh.
Um, when like in, I think it's the Odyssey. Yeah, in the Odyssey, Odysseus goes to the underworld and he meets like all of his war buddies from the Iliad, who are dead, and they all talk about his warmth, and everybody huddles around him for his warmth of the living body. And the same thing, there's like different versions of the Orpheus. There's like Virgil's version and Ovid's version, but they all mention this idea that like the dead are cold and the living are warm, and that the dead want the warmth.
Very
So
similar in his Dark Materials, too.
yeah, yeah. So
Yes, and it's also very Orpheus about how the dead were following them
yeah, right up to the
right up to the gate,
portal.
basically.
Yeah.
And they, didn't have to look at them. They were just coming.
It's like, yeah, please look back actually, so they don't follow us.
That is very interesting. Chapter 27, the Institute is burned to the ground and Lockwood and Co. escape. The chapter at this time, something very strange is going on with the perspective in this. And this could be 3 different things, honestly.
Oh, okay.
Because it looks like maybe it is just the exploded big round thing, the coconut, the big flare,
coconut?
the giant flare.
Okay.
But also it could be like from the sky looking down at the burning buildings.
Okay.
But also it kind of looks like a lantern, maybe. Because it's
I
got like a
think
base.
I think this is the 4th thing.
Mm-hmm.
This is like the breastplate of the creeping shadow, and maybe like some
Yeah,
parts
could
of
be
the
that.
leg and hands.
Could be that too, but do we see that get blown apart?
Not really, no. I think the person who is driving the creeping shadow is always in it.
Yeah.
He gets kind of blown up a little bit, but yeah, it's never like blown off of him or something.
So what in the world is this?
Yeah, I don't know.
And why are the flames like in it?
Yeah, that's why I assume it's like the breastplate and it's like reflecting the explosion or something.
But we only hear about that guy because they jump off of him or climb up of him or whatever.
Yeah.
It's very confusing. I don't know what this is.
Maybe I'll notice as we
maybe
move through. But yeah, there's white magnesium explosions, and it's just like the one world was like very flat, very like noiseless, and then they come into like fireworks going off or something, and everything she talks about, it feels very wet on this side because like all the ice is melting down her back and things like that.
And that is very cold. And just she talks about the bright lights overload. And how both of them are like incapacitated for a second.
Mm-hmm. Skull immediately is like, have a nice trip.
Yeah. I love Skull. And he's like so unconcerned about what's happening around them. He's just like, tell me what you saw. Tell me what it was like. Tell me everything. And they're like, we gotta go help our friends.
Yeah, so he lets them know that like your friends are burning everything down.
Oh yeah.
So you might want to check in on that. And so then we get to see that Holly and Kips are throwing bombs, and George is like running out into the open and just going crazy, just chucking flares all over the place. On the other side of the warehouse is Rotwell and his cronies, and they're trying to lob bombs back, but it seems like they're getting overwhelmed. The guy in the creeping shadow armor is trying to get over to them, but his suit is so clunky that he can't make it.
I love that. I love the idea that there's so much going on that they have a moment to just stand there as Lockwood puts the spirit cape into his backpack and everything. Like, I don't know. It's a weird image in my head. But yeah, Holly has like one of the ghost guns, I think. And I have to assume that she looks really cool because Lucy's like, is that actually Holly?
Right, yeah.
And that's great. I do enjoy Lockwood's, I could watch this all day. But then he says, I suppose we have to help them. And Lucy says, you go, I just need to do one thing first. And this is a really sweet moment when she's like, I've had to leave the skull behind from close calls twice now, and it's not going to happen again. Put him in my backpack.
Yeah,
and
finally.
Even Skull, he really gives the impression of like a cat, a happy cat here. He's like, oh yes, back where I belong. It's great. Two firm friends reunited at last. There should be sweet violin music playing for us.
That's really good. Yeah. Also, I really like this, image of George that we get. There's like a whole paragraph of him, just coming out from the crates, like I said, and throwing wildly his magnesium flares all over the place. It reminds me of in the first book when they're like, there's a ghost in the house, and he comes out 5 seconds later with like bandoliers of bombs all over his body.
Right,
and
yes.
Kitted out, ready to go. There's something about this where like George has always been ready for this moment, maybe. But yeah, he's gone berserk, and it's a lot of fun.
I like that idea too, that George always knew on some level that they were going to have to throw everything they had at real human people instead of ghosts.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But once she's got Skull, Lucy goes to where Holly is, and Holly freaks out at first because they all thought they were dead.
Yeah, she's like, you're a ghost, you're haunting me.
Which is great. And they thought they were dead because they saw them walk into the circle because things have been timey-wimey. And
right, yeah, even there's time dilation.
Yeah, it feels like it was at least an hour for Lucy and Lockwood. It's only been maybe 10 minutes. And for the other half of the group. And they never left at all. They pretty much were like, no, we can't leave Lucy and Lockwood in there by themselves. Let's steal all these weapons in here and go in guns blazing. Ghost guns blazing.
And avenge them, I guess. That was the...
Yeah. Well, at first, when they went in, they thought they were still alive. And then they saw them walk into the circle.
Oh, I see. So they went to back them up, and then they were like, no, they died. You must all die too.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah, I think it's like you said too, because at the end of the last podcast, they saw the creeping shadow coming in behind them, and that's kind of why they were like, uh-oh, we better hoof it.
Yeah.
And then
And
that thing never showed up. And so it was like, and you said that maybe when what they were seeing was like the creeping shadow that they watched in the graveyard before.
right, because of the time dilation.
Yeah. So like, I think that's right, because they never really see it through this whole thing. And then when they pop back out, they're like in the quote unquote present again. So it's
Yeah.
very weird.
But he is there, so maybe they did see him. And he is still in all the iron.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So maybe not. But also they'd heard somebody coming in at the door, and that was when they first decided that they should hide. But that
Yeah.
was that was just Kips and George and Lucy, Holly. So that's important.
Right. Yeah. They solved that little mystery. They were like, oh no, that's why we ran in there, because we heard you guys.
We
So,
could have just left together.
it's pretty funny.
But I guess then the story wouldn't be as good.
Yeah. I do like this whole thing that we get about George, because it's been previously established in the other books that George is like terrible at throwing stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so like I love Lucy's description here, where she says, curiously, that particular anti-talent boosted his effectiveness. Whenever he ventured out from the crates and with a savage cry lobbed a flare or ghost bomb toward the enemy, no one had a clue where it would land. So like, he's just like, everybody just duck and cover whenever you see George come out. I love the image. Like, I can see it so clearly in my mind of like his eyes closed, his head thrown back, and his arms just flailing as he's throwing these things randomly everywhere.
Yeah,
I don't know.
that would be my technique. Eyes
Very
closed,
funny.
hope for the best.
It's crazy.
It's one of the reasons I don't drive. But yeah, so they all have some brief reunions here, and George has this great bit where he says, "You've got to admit, Kips, you didn't get a night like this when you were working for Fitz. Doesn't it make you feel better?" Kips is like, "Feel better about what? About being you."
Right, yeah.
And I can just see him with like flares in his hand, blowing stuff up, and like just like having this zinger ready. It's so good. But then Rotwell himself comes over and brings his sword down towards Kips, but Lockwood gets his rapier out in time. And if we remember, Rotwell's doesn't have a rapier. He has like a proper sword.
Right, yeah, like a double-edged longsword situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, this turns into a sword battle.
God, this would be so cool to see
This whole thing,
visually.
awesome.
Like
Yeah.
the sword fight with the explosions and the ghosts all in the circle still. And, you know, somebody really
Tailor-made.
should make a TV show out of this. It would be
Yeah.
so good.
This would be incredible.
Anyways, and Rotwell tries to be all like, "I made a prediction earlier. Do you recall?" And Lockwood is like, "Yeah, you said I'd cross you." And then he's all, "I promised to deal with you when that happened, and so I shall." What an overdramatic ass. And so I shall. Fuck off.
I'm the fire in your blade.
Yeah, exactly.
Whatever. So stupid. It's really good. Yeah, I love that the grown-ups are over the top and the teenagers are more grounded. That's really good. There's also this moment where he's like, Rodwell's like, years of work, years of careful study, and you've ruined it in one evening.
Yeah.
It like reminds me of Fairfax from the first book, who's
Yes.
like, it's one dead girl. I'm not going to let that ruin my whole life and all of my work. It's just these like, I don't know, these entitled rich guys, the way that they see the world and how affronted they are by accountability when they have no regard for other people.
Yep.
But they're like, but what about me? You're not considering me.
Yeah. And this is where Rotwell has the line I was talking about, where it says, "You do know more than I expected, but I don't think you understand it all. If you did, you'd realize the unfortunate deaths of the villagers was a small price to pay, and the same can certainly be said of your death." And that to me, I don't know, sounds like it sounds like he knows what's going on and that he was trying to figure it out, or figure out how she's doing it.
Yeah, maybe. He does seem to really understand something. I have a hard time trusting him. This is funny because usually it's the other way around for us, where because he's such a blowhard that I don't know. But yeah, maybe he does. He definitely knows that it's like the other side, I think, for sure.
Miss Fitz is doing. I just decided to exclude a first name there because whatever. I don't know what he knows. I don't know what, you know what I'm saying?
Well, during this whole time that Rotwell is like expositing, Lockwood is like also moving him backward, or I think Lockwood is actually moving backward. He's kind of retreating towards the circle, I guess.
Yeah, well, it does say that Lockwood is losing the sword fight, but it's
right.
because they just spent an hour on the other side and they're both exhausted and cold.
Yeah, he's
and
sapped.
Yeah, he's just done. Not that he's actually worse than Steve Rotwell. He would want everyone to know that. It's just bad timing.
Or that, yeah. Or that like he's not even intentionally doing it to get him in the right spot. It's just not going his way.
And then we have that great moment where somebody's like, he's got Lockwood cold, whatever that means. Well, I mean, I know what it means, but I've never heard that expression before. And then George pulls out a flare and is like, or so he thinks.
This is so good.
And it just completely misses.
This is so easy to picture, too.
Yes, it's so good.
It just flies right over him and then lands in the middle of the circle and explodes and blows like the chains apart. It makes everything much, much worse. It's really good.
And then Lucy is just like, I guess I'll take care of this. And runs over there. And when Rotwell is almost like monologuing after he gets Lockwood beat, basically, Lucy just comes up behind and kicks him into the circle. It's so good.
It's great. Yeah, it's really good. And I think it also like really pays off the other moment that we talked about, the Locklye moment of like, get under the cape with me.
Yeah.
Because this is the other side of that coin. Like they save each other. It's not just Lockwood saving her. She saves him. And so I feel like this really pays it off. It's also good. Like if you think back to the TV show when he does fight the Golden Blade guy, and there's like the whole thing where Lucy comes up behind that guy and like brains him with the plank of wood.
Right, yes.
It's like the same exact move. Like she saves them kind of,
That they work well together.
Yeah, this is the thing about them. This is why we like them as a couple, because they actually work together. It's not just him saving her. It's they save each other.
Yeah. So then he basically dies. And I mean, he does. Ghost touch. It
definitely dies.
Lots of ghosts in there.
Sucked in.
He does not have a cape on, so.
Yeah, it's real bad. It's also like perfect justice, right? Like he created the portal and he's like eaten by his own things.
And all those townspeople died for his stupid whatever.
Yeah. And we know that the townspeople like followed them all the way up here. So it's like they get their revenge too. So I don't know. It works it's good. Really well.
And then afterwards, Lucy's like, we got to destroy the circle, or Lockwood is like it. Somebody says that. It's actually unclear now that I'm rereading it.
Wait.
Lockwood got unsteadily to his feet. He picked up his sword, white-faced. He grabbed my hand, hurried us towards the others. George, what? We've got to destroy the circle, that monster flare of yours. Now might be just the time for it. Genuinely, I don't know who's talking here.
Oh, yeah.
Could be Lucy, could be Lockwood.
I'm trying to remember the audiobook. There's lots of moments like this in the audiobook where I was a little bit surprised by which voice she was using, because I was like, oh, this seems like Lucy would say that. And it's Lockwood's voice. But yeah, there's no attribution given. You're right. It's very, the pace of this is very like boom, 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 boom. Like we're moving fast.
But then George says, what? Big Brenda? Because he's named
Gave
the
bomb
flare.
a name. Yeah.
This is the one that I was calling the coconut, because I feel like it was described that size and shape at one point, but maybe
no,
that
it
was
is right here.
Oh, okay, great.
George pulled the silver coconut from his belt. Yeah, so maybe that is what it is. Yeah, you're right.
Who knows?
That's funny.
And he's just like, oh, very well. Want me to throw it? No. I mean, I guess it's Lockwood, because then he says, why not give it to Lucy? She's closer.
And don't toss it.
Just pass it over to her. And then this bit, I don't know. What George is like, set it for 2 minutes. And Lucy's like, nah, let's set it for 1.
Yeah.
Why? Why not give yourselves 2 minutes to get out? But whatever.
Yeah. I don't know that it would change anything because it would still blow up the sources and that would get rid of the ghosts. But yeah, they're worried that there's like good image of this, like the chains are jumping because the ghosts keep like, it's like they're battering down the door or something, but they're the chains on the ground
Yeah.
and they keep jumping back and stuff. So it's all very cool. Yeah, they throw the bomb in there, they run away, and the building explodes behind them, kind of knocks them flat. And then yeah, they keep getting out and the fire moves through the building and then blows up the weapons room, and that there's an even bigger explosion. The whole place is on fire.
Yay! We took down Routwell, more or
And
less.
destroyed all the evidence.
Yeah.
So like, okay.
But also like killed anyone who knew they were there.
Mm-hmm.
I do have a bit of a problem. Like, I get that this is not the style of these books, so that's fine. But Lucy just killed a man. And that never bothers her. You know, it never comes up again, really.
Mm-hmm.
And I do feel like I get, like, even if you're rescuing your love interest, that would have an effect on you.
Yeah.
Especially since Lucy and Death have a really complicated relationship. So I get that, and Stroud made it funny so that to kind of hide that that's what happens. You know what I mean?
And that, yeah, and that the ghosts technically kill him, but it's, you know, it's
But
like if
she
you push
kicked him in
someone
there,
off a
yeah.
cliff,
Yeah.
you know, it'd be
The
like, well,
fall.
gravity killed him, the fall. Yeah. And no, you killed him. So
Yeah, so I guess maybe this just comes from my wish of every like good middle grade book that I've read to have that as an adult book too.
yeah, be a little bit more sophisticated and realistic, but it's just not what it's going for.
Yeah, it's not bad writing, I would say, because it would be weird if it like it wouldn't fit in with the story the way that it's told. But also, I miss that character development. I guess it would be really interesting.
I feel like though, if we could watch the story continue and Lucy like got into, you know, like close to a midlife crisis or something, I feel like this would come back. She'd be like, I'm a murderer, you know, like.
There's
You know
also
what I mean?
a time jump between this and the beginning of book 5, like not a long time jump, but a bit of one. So it's possible she had a mental crisis in the middle there.
She has nightmares about Rotwell murdering that guy in front of her, and then she murdered him, and she's like, I'm just like him.
Yeah, exactly. But once they get out and everything's blown up, they finally all sit down and talk about actually some of the stuff that I thought they talked about earlier, but they work out the timeline of everything that happened. And yeah.
It's important, I think, that they get this moment to tell each other, you know, what happened and why was all that going on. And,
you know, and I do like George's, you know, well, we thought you were dead, didn't we? We were upset.
well, he lost everybody again.
Yeah.
I've been talking about this the whole book, that like George's anger and everything. I feel like this is really like his catharsis in the book.
Yeah, that he gets to blow everything up a couple times.
Yeah. And then he like has regret because he's like, all that research. How could I do this?
Oh, poor George.
That's pretty good. I like that Kipps was the one who was like, we should follow orders and leave. And even Holly was like, nah, man, this place has got to we got to burn it down.
They took our friends and they're trying to destroy this city or town, whatever, village. We're blowing it all up, dude. Yeah. You work at Lockwood and Co. now.
Exactly.
Where we burn things down and blow things up.
It's that recklessness.
Yeah.
So it's a good way to jump him into the gang.
Yeah.
He's like fully in now.
I guess, yeah, you're not really part of Lockwood and Co. until you blow something up accidentally or on purpose, I guess.
We had no choice but to burn down the Institute, Barnes. That's what we had to do.
Yeah, it's our hazing ritual.
Yeah.
Anyways, Lockwood is very thankful, and he says that, you know, George can have the last biscuit. And Holly's like, no, he can have them all. And then they just yeah, he can have the whole barrel. And they just kind of sit on the hill and watch it all burn, which is great.
My note here is, this is cozy.
Should pull out some marshmallows.
Yeah. The sun is coming up, you know, at the same time. So I don't know. It feels very like bucolic while they're watching like an industrial plant burn.
Yeah.
It's good. And that's the end of part 5. So
yeah, that was really good. So that's my favorite part of the whole series, the journey on the other side.
it's really evocative and well written, and it's not even that long, but it's very powerful, I think.
Yeah, I always remember it as being more, even though in a very technical sense, not much happens.
Yeah.
Kind of a lot happens.
It's very heavy in the book somehow.
Yeah. And it's really great how Stroud has this huge plot moment, but also this huge character moment.
Yeah, all wrapped up together.
Yeah, that's really good.
I think it also feels even starker because he does this great job of contrasting, from the first chapter we talked about, where like very little happens, there's very little in that world, and it's very cold, and then we come back out to like explosions and bombast and fire.
Yeah.
Like that contrast is so stark that it makes the first thing feel in retrospect even more of what it is.
Yes.
So it's just really good writing.
And also kind of a metaphor for Lucy's whole journey in the story of how she was depressed and alone at the beginning, and then rejoined with Lockwood and Co. and suddenly explosions. Her favorite thing.
Fire. She would just sit on the hill and watch it burn.
Yeah.
That's Lockwood and Co.
And that means she's happy again because fire.
Yeah. Even the skull is back.
Yeah.
So they're all together.
The whole group.
Yeah. So next time we'll talk about part 6. We'll talk about the whole thing, which is the end of the book. So.
Yay. I love this book.
Yeah, it's great. I love how the book shifts. Like what I was saying earlier about, when they're going through that feels like a real thriller. And the podcast before that, we talked about how it's a heist and how earlier in the book, it felt like the Maltese Falcon to me. Like this book just kind of effortlessly moves through these different genres as Lucy's character is going through these different developments and evolution. It like really uses genre to key off of her movement through the plot. It's really good. It's very interesting. I love that, how the structure follows her development.
It would be so good as a TV show.
It's unfair.
It is unfair. Like, why couldn't they have just gotten here and then be canceled? I don't... I mean, that would suck too, obviously, but it would suck less. I just want my favorite part.
Yeah, it really felt like they were building up to this being like amazing and like laying the groundwork for why she left and all that stuff to make even more sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed. Oh, well.
What about jokes?
No, I love that, doesn't that make you feel better about being you? That's my favorite. Although Big Brenda's good too.
Big Brenda's funny.
And the whole, no, just pass it.
Yeah, I love George being out there. Like I said, it doesn't say this, but like with his eyes closed, arms wheeling, throwing bombs.
Just all the George in these chapters was great, and it kind of needed after everything.
I mean, I think George also is the punk rock.
We have to go back. We have to blow it all up. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. We can't just let them go. Yeah, George is like the all-around MVP of part 5.
All right. If you want to reach out to the show, you can do so on Twitter at Lockwood Podcast. If you want, you can follow me on Instagram at InferiorKateReads.
You can send your emails to contact@hologrammedia.com, or you can go to hologrammedia.com and scroll down to the bottom and fill out the contact form.
And remember that Big Brenda is always the answer.
All your problems.
Yeah, just blow it all up.